so much to teach them. There's so many questions to answer. They need to know that they get it, at least a little bit. Do they understand it? Do they have a clue what the reign of God is supposed to be about? So we're told he withdraws to this very special area called Caesarea Philippi, which is part of the Roman province of Palestine outside of Judea. It must be great to be an important person to have a place named after you. Okay, Caesarea is named after Caesar. It's good to be the king, as Mel Brooks said. And you have a place named after yourself. Like John Lewis getting Lewisburg named after himself, I guess. So he escapes to this place, and then he poses them a test. And he asks them a question. What does the crowd say about it? And you have to get the context and get the backdrop. Because if you're watching a movie and you don't see what's behind in the scenery and you're just focused on the face of the characters, you don't really get the full impact of the movie. Now, those teenagers who have, for the last couple of years, spent time in the class, which I do for confirmation, will recognize the magazines that I never always put out, but this is what they write on when they're writing things. It's a copy of Biblical Archaeology Review, which is my own secret personal passion. One of these days, I am actually going to get on an archaeological dig. Okay, it's kind of like on my bucket list. All right? And well, you laugh, but when I was in seminary, I was signed up for an archaeological dig. It was part of the, they worked with us poor, mere, humble seminarians, and we were allowed in our third year to kind of be an appendix to a group that was sent every year from the Biblical in Rome. We would go over to Israel. Unfortunately, my year, we were scheduled to go Yom Kippur 1973. Does that date mean something to you? It was the war, the Yom Kippur War. So I never got to go. So this is one of the things that's on my list someday. But anyway, in a magazine like this, which is what I do in my spare time, so yeah, I don't have a life. There are a number of articles on this particular area because it is such a gold mine for today's archaeologists. First and foremost, it seemed to have been an area that had a lot of local legends associated with it. It was considered holy by the native peoples of the land, kind of like there are areas in our own Southwest that are very sacred to the Native Americans. There are all these legends floating around about this particular area. And on top of that, there would have been in Jesus' day, even in our first century, the ruins of temples that were built to the gods and goddesses of that era. That these temples would have been a couple of thousand years old by the time Jesus and the 12 were walking around. The ruins of religious temples. And then because it is good to be the king, there were temples there built to Caesar, kind of like on the scale of Washington, D.C. Think of the Capitol building, all right? Those treated like a god. Philip was Herod's son, so Philip had a temple built to himself. He had a temple built to his father, okay? So into all of this very palatial environment and very holy environment, where so many important people had monuments made for them, here comes this penniless, homeless carpenter preacher with 12 of his closest followers who are not all that wealthy. And he starts having a very serious conversation with them, and he asks them in the midst of this background, who am I to you? Or at least to the crowd. And as he starts speaking with them, he starts getting back from them the Sunday school answers. Okay? Some people say you're John the Baptist come back from the dead, because John was so cool, if anyone could pull that off. I mean, that's the unspoken thing there. Or another answer is, you are Elijah come back. Now, I gave this test to those at St. Paul's last night. They all failed, so please don't embarrass us again. Okay? What's the point of the comment, Joe? You're not allowed to answer because you know. Come on, guys. Sunday school, Bible, please. Anybody? We have so much to learn this year. Remember, in the Hebrew Scriptures, there are two people who did not, or are known to have not died, who are referred to. One was Enoch, one was Elijah. And in very faithful Jewish families to this day, when they celebrate Passover, as I have joined families that have, there is a place at table at Passover set for Elijah. And there's a cup of wine. You're shaking your head, yes. So, am I getting it right? Once in a while I do. Okay. There is a cup of wine set for Elijah, with the belief that Elijah would return prior to the coming of the Messiah. Maybe you're Elijah. Some say you might be Jeremiah, and this is a bit more obscure, but also part of Jewish religious tradition and legend. All of us know, if we know anything about the Ark of the Covenant in our day, we're all kind of restricted to Indiana Jones, right? Okay? unfortunately. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay. Lost Ark. When Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians, the Ark was never noted as one of the things taken, and there's always been legend associated with that. Now, sorry, Harrison Ford did not really find it. I hate to break that to you. Okay? But the point was, there's part of Jewish legend that said that somehow the night before the city walls were breached by the army, that Jeremiah had to walk out of the city, and that it would be returned by Jeremiah before the Messiah comes. It's part of Jewish legend as well. Not all, not everyone, but there are several. So there are all sorts of this going on in the background. And in the midst of all of this, Jesus says to them, okay, that's what the crowd says. What do you say? Your answer. Who do you say I am? Now it gets important. Instead of talking about him, he's asking you personally, who am I for you? My friends, that is the most important question a Christian has to deal with in his or her life. Peter speaks for all of humanity. And remember, the word Peter is the Greek word for rock. Actually, it's for rocky, to be technical, okay? So if you have an image in your head from all those Sly Stallone movies of what Rocky is like, that's kind of like what Peter was, all right? And he gets it. Peter the rock. And he says, you are the anointed one. You are a person in a unique relationship with God. You are higher and better than our expectations or our aspirations. You are the hope of our nation. You are the fulfillment of our dreams. And he bumbles into the truth. Not that he gets it right ultimately, because he has no clue what he's really saying. But he understands the point that you have to answer the question, who is Jesus? It is not enough to know what theologians teach, or what church leaders teach, what priests from a pulpit preach about. Who is he for you? What is your relationship with him like? You may know church teaching, you may know the teaching of our councils and church fathers, you may know the Bible inside out and upside down, and all that is good. But do you know Christ? In your prayer life to the Father, do you know Christ? When you call yourself a disciple,